You've got to be kidding. The GOAT himself, Magnus Carlsen, getting smashed twice in one day. It was titled Tuesday, 24th of June. This game here, kicking off with pawn to e4, best by test, was played in the early tournament. It's round 3 here, and Magnus's opponent is this young candidate master, Maxim. Now it looks like he's 14, 15 years old, playing the game of his life here. Watch this. Magnus plays the La France variation, whispers on guard of course, and now we see an exchange. Magnus almost falls asleep. Luckily his father's on hand to douse him with water, bring him back to life. Knight f3, and we see a shred of imbalance as that pony steps in front of the pawn here. Bishop d3 played, and Magnus reveals his sneaky point, forces that one back. Now he's the big boss on that diagonal, and this one has to go to the side, defend. Not very nice, but fear not. This little piggy's about to kick back the big bad wolf. You could now regurgitate the
mushrooms.
Or maybe we should say recycle. Sounds a little bit like birds throwing up in each other's mouths otherwise, but not played. Castles. Magnus goes whoosh, slaps that one off the board here, leaves white with a structure that only a mother could love, and after castles, surely in compensation for the pawn structure, you have to hold on to your bishops here. Bit of h3 action, rook e1, bishop f4, but Maxim goes bishop d3, voluntarily giving Magnus his bishop bear. Normally the greatest players in the world don't do that, but okay, he's a candidate master. Excuse me, still learning the game here. Rook b1 hits the half open file. Magnus pushes the pawn therefore. Bishop developing here, and now the open file is taken. It's the only one on the board, and Danny Wrench says that open files are like commodities. The more rare they are, the more valuable they are, and therefore the more you have to go after them. There's only one here, so both players challenging, both players getting rickrolled, or rookrolled rather, but not so fast. The knight now hops, keeps this tension here, but Magnus takes. Pawn structure changed. Is it good for white? Good for black? I mean, this is Magnus's bread and butter. He's made a career on endgame squeezes, especially in blitz. If you take, you lose a rook here. So we didn't see that. We saw the queen go into Siberia, and it's about to freeze if you're not careful, because Magnus centralizes that noble steed. The pawn is captured, not the best, and it allows this amazing move, very far from obvious. You know, there's an attacked pawn here, but best is spawning the seahorse. Now, why is it so good? Well, if white takes another pawn, you know, you're not trapping or anything. There's always queen d6 and stuff. Well, there's knight d3. Now, there's an octopus that Stocktopus can be proud of. No rook lift to defend the bishop. Pawn covers the square, of course. You're busted. Have to give an exchange, and black is winning. You even force the queens off the board. So let's run back. If this had been played, that is not working. What if then bishop e3? Hit the knight, get out the way of the fork. Well, here's the beautiful point. Queen c6. Fine, let's say you chop that annoying knight. Rook a8. The queen was in jail when it took that pawn. There's these amazing slow motion trap lines. No queen a3 or anything in some of the earlier moments. Really beautiful. Magnus misses it, but I had to show you that sideline. This c pawn now advances here, and he still has an advantage, but look at this. a4. Now we see queen f5 hitting the undefended bishop. And here Maxim has the kind of understanding, let's say, or maybe he lucks out to understand he can go bishop g3, not bishop h2, not bishop e3. Drops here, allows Magnus to mangle the structure, and this one's now weak, but you can't actually take it immediately, or queen b8 check, and that's a simple double shot. You win a piece here, so the pawn isn't touched. Magnus invades, hits 2 at once there, but after rook f1 going for the counterplay, it's really getting tactical. You know, if that pawn drops, surely the e-pawn's so dangerous. Well, there's always a check to pick it up. Best is actually stepping away with the king, going for this kind of dynamic counterplay stuff with black, allowing white in. Let's crack on with the game. Magnus defends that weak point. The queen takes here, and it's scary because the white a pawn is running. Black should technically take this pawn. Why? You actually expose the king some more when it steps to h2. But this one is taken. So logical to free up Deirdre to run down the board. But now there's this excellent randomizer. It's pawn to e6, a real bone in Magnus's throat. Well done if you spotted that one. I mean, randomizer does it a disservice. It's just a great move because if you capture, you can take with check here. Or, sorry, what am I talking about? That's a different line. Fine, best is actually taking the pawn first. King goes, you win an entire rook. Rook blocks, you win an entire rook. Fine, you can't take. So Magnus checks, the king goes. We suddenly see why we'd love that pawn to be disappeared. Now if you take here, these are the kind of lines I was about to show, where you take all the pieces off and the pawn's too fast. It's running through. So let's run back. Queen takes doesn't work, or sorry, pawn takes doesn't work, queen takes doesn't work, none of it works. You know, stuff gets chopped off, a pawn's too fast basically, king's too safe. f5 is best, but Magnus plays king h7. Now we see takes here, and it's just this gargantuan attack. There is really nothing can be done. Rook e8 swings back desperately, but queen d8 is not a real sacrifice. You're going to make a new one, and that's what we see. Takes, well obviously takes, you're fine there. Queen can't get back to defend. There's no checks, there's nothing. We see this and this and this and this, threatening mate in one, and because this is the only way to defend, this is why Magnus resigned. Of course, you hoover the queens off, you come behind the passed pawn, and you run the a pawn.
Chess speaks for...
Okay, let's do the procedure. Block. This is first what I do.
Incredible game by Maxim, and look at the clock times. Really hung with Magnus, 33 moves. Let's jump to this second one. This was in the second tournament, the late tournament against Daniel Naroditsky. Round 6 here, Daniel with white. What a game this was. e4 on the board. Magnus goes for the Moderno defense. Now we see d4, d6, knight c3, pawn to c ships, and Daniel goes for the aggressive trio of dragons. Daenerys is flying them down, and I'm highlighting a few possible moves for black, right? You know, surely you get your bits out at the board. It's what you're taught the moment you start playing chess. Magnus doesn't do it. He pushes another pawn and the same pawn twice. How can this be good? Guess what? It's the best move in the position. Because after the advance here, setting up the overpowered camel toe pawn formation, I feel like a camel right now. It's like 30 degrees Celsius in the UK. What's that in Fahrenheit? I don't know, but we're not geared up for it. Drier than a camel's tongue out here. Please send H2O. We now see this one securing the light squares. And this is really the point of the pawn push. You know, white extended and everything. Black wants to play on this complex. Knight f3 played. Bishop g4, pin and win baby. Daniel carries on developing. Magnus sets up the party hat. He's having a great time here, and knight h6. Now normally a knight on the edge is a stinky loser with very limited life prospects, but here of course it makes complete sense. You can even, after pawn h3, chuck in the old Zwischenzug. Magnus whispers it, makes the hairs on your arm stand up. This is an intermezzo, also known as an in-between move in English. You didn't have time to take here because this was too annoying. So therefore this is how the game plays out. And now h4 goes to clamp down on this dark square, trying to cement the knight outpost, but Daniel's having none of it. Chops off the board. Magnus captures towards the center, but this line is very interesting. The old engine loves it because of this maneuver and this maneuver. You sit that one there, an absolute bastion in defense, and then you push forward with the pawns. Okay, not played, but a really curious line. Normally you don't want to allow that e-pawn running, but this is how the game proceeded. We get the 0-0-0, and it's not even Christmas. Magnus is king stuck in the center. The knight develops, and g4, of course, we play it. It's en croissant. Magnus bellows it in his best French accent. Beautiful etiquette. He's the world champion at Blitz for a reason. Co-champion, sorry. Disco dancer Nepo is also up there. Now we see b5, still doing nothing about the king's safety. The only reason he's getting away with this is the centre is closed. Otherwise, you'd be French toast. But now we see this one, keeping Lord Hans Feingold happy, and the knight rotates around. Knight e2, clearing some defensive manoeuvres, real quality move that. a5 from Magnus, he's not messing about, and now knight c4 spawns the seahorse, and h5. Great space gain, that's a past one, remember. Could become a baby girl one day, and you really activate this bishop in many of the lines. a4 from Magnus, and would you look at that, he puts every pawn on a light square, only goes and wins himself a day in the life of an ostrich. There he is. What a lucky guy, giving out rides. It's the kind of thing you tell your grandkids when you're on your deathbed. We now see knight c1, Danya forgetting which way the pony should move, but actually no, it's headed for some nice outpost squares here, and Magnus should do some development really. It's the order of the day. But he plows forth with that c pawn. Now we see takes, bishop takes, the knight springs forth, attacking it, and Magnus gets super aggressive with this move. I'd be very scared to do that. Looks so out on a limb. In fact, what if you try and kick the defender? I never checked this out. Why is it so bad? Let's say you take like this. Is it queen a5 coming? It is. Can you go rook h2? Check. King here. Okay, and then I guess you save the bishop. Fine, it just doesn't work out. If you try and kick the defender of the bishop, you weaken your king too much. We're doing a line on the fly. So this is what Danya did. Not the absolute best. He could have actually activated this way. Whoops, there's a drunken arrow there. But what we see now is queen b6. Takes. You could take with the knight. Magnus goes with the queen. Loves himself a queenless endgame, of course. But Danya declines. Excellent chess, because he's now saying, look at your king, Magnus, your rooks aren't connected, therefore this is a good move to connect those split rooks. If you invade now, definitely playable, but actually black can cover. Sure, you could run the pawn, let's say, but you hit the queen once more. Possibly you can start looking at queen sacrifice stuff, but let's show the best line here. Goes like this, queen kicked back here, fine, game goes on. You can start attacking on the dark squares, the rook can slide over, fine. Danya didn't invade, playable but not seen. We get knight b4 instead, going for some crazy tactics, and Magnus just falls for it, hook, line and sinker. What should he do? Well, attack the queen immediately, very natural idea, or queen e4 is another good one, trying to fight against the influence of this monster. But in the game, Magnus goes walkies with the king, so understandable, it's in the gaze of the rook and everything like that, but Magnus has inadvertently walked into an absolute demolition job. What is the best move for white to play here? So Danya finds it, he crashes through on d5 with the rook. I mean, what to say about that move?
It's an absolute banger. It's a game changer.
And the point here is that if pawn captures, you take with the knight, you've gone to Forktown, population Magnus Carlsen, it's all she wrote. So the best way to fight against this move is queen e4. Again, just challenge this strong piece that's now looking down here. But we don't see it. Instead, rook ag8 attacks the queen in a different manner, but it allows checkmate in 4 moves here. Can you find how Danya finished off the game? The move he played is rook d7, a second sacrifice of that rook, and it is accepted. You know what to do. King b6, the queen marches in, soon delivers mate, so takes was played. Now the check on the board, and the king actually has no squares due to the influence of these pieces. So you can only go here or here. Magnus steps here, trying to dodge the knight check, but no good. You simply force it through by checking once more. This is the only square, and this shuts the trap on the king. The pawn's such an excellent supporting mater, and you can't step here. Brutal, lovely finish from Danya, punishing the king in the center. Hope you enjoyed these couple of games here, and if you want to see a young prodigy, a stunning player taking down Hikaru, have a look at the video on screen here. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon. Cheers.